Welcome to the Naruto fanfiction. In this story, our main character is a scientist from our world who finds himself reincarnated into the Narutoverse. Get ready for a unique take on the ninja world, as seen through the eyes of someone with modern scientific knowledge, as he's set on a journey to become Tony Stark of this new world, where he is reincarnated into. Chapter 1. The Beginning and the End. After dying, Ken William found himself in a bewildering landscape, enveloped by an all-consuming darkness that left him disoriented and vulnerable. As he struggled to make sense of his surroundings, a creeping fear tightened its grip on his throat, urging him to forge ahead despite his uncertainty. Am I dead? Or am I in a coma, and all this is leftover oxygen talking in my head? He asked himself, his voice echoing in the void. Deep in the depths of this inky abyss, a torrent of questions flooded his mind, each more perplexing than the last. These doubts clouded his thoughts as he fumbled for solid ground, for anything that might anchor him in this surreal realm. He was standing, but when he looked down, there was nothing to stand on, as if land did not exist. There was only pitch-black darkness beneath his feet. Ken's quest for familiarity led him not to solid structures or recognizable landmarks, but to vast numbers of bubbles dancing in the void. Curiosity warring with dread, he pushed against one, expecting a satisfying pop, but his hand met nothing. The bubble moved out of the way. Despite his attempts to touch them, he found that he could not make contact with these ethereal spheres. A faint light flickered in the distance, drawing him forward. As he approached, he could see a figure blowing bubbles. Before he could speak, the person turned to face him. Ken's breath hitched. It wasn't a human, not in the traditional sense. The being radiated an otherworldly luminescence, its form shifting and swirling like smoke. A voice, both deep and melodious, filled the air. "Hello, Mr. William," the voice said, bringing a wave of relief to Ken. "Is this heaven or hell?" Ken blurted, his words tumbling out quickly. The being chuckled and replied, "Neither, Mr. William. This place is beyond heaven or hell." Confusion etched itself across Ken's face. If this is not heaven or hell, then where am I? The mysterious being replied, "This is the celestial void, a place where you come face to face with choices not given to many, and where imagination is forged into reality, and reality back into imagination." Skepticism flickered in Ken's eyes. "Are you God of the afterlife?" The being's form rippled. "Well, that's a tough question," they replied. "I am and I am not. A god is a mortal construct. Compared to that, I am much more." Ken thought about this for a moment before speaking again. "Why am I here?" "You have to make some decisions, and I am here to give you options and support you in making those choices." The mysterious being smiled and remarked. The being blew another bubble, and Ken watched as it floated away into the darkness until it disappeared. He had never met anyone who believed in the existence of gods, let alone someone who claimed to be something beyond a god. He had always been a firm believer in science and logic, and the idea of supernatural entities seemed absurd to him. He looked at the being with newfound curiosity. "Who are you then, Mr. More Than a God?" The being blew another bubble and said, "I am a concept and idea of birth and beginnings, Mr. William, a force that exists beyond your limited understanding." Ken wasn't convinced. Science and logic were his guiding lights, and this defied everything he knew. Yet as he gazed at the swirling bubbles, a doubt gnawed at his certainty. Perhaps the universe held more mysteries than he dared to believe. The being continued, "You see, Mr. William, gods have been a part of human culture since the beginning of time. Every civilization has had its own gods and goddesses, worshipped and revered them, and believed in their powers. But gods stay in their own universe. You are standing outside the limits of your old universe. This place exists outside of those universes, and it is here where multiverses are born and die. Even if you are a renowned scientist, when it comes to the nature of reality, you have only scratched the surface. With your limited knowledge of the world, you may find it hard to believe that there is anything beyond your small planet. But it is not crazy to consider the possibility that there are things in the universe that you cannot possibly understand." Ken listened carefully, his skepticism warring with a growing sense of wonder. Although he was still doubtful, he couldn't help but wonder if there might be some truth to what they were saying. Perhaps there was more to the universe than what he had previously thought. Okay, this place and you are both beyond my imagination. Then, could you please assist me in comprehending what lies beyond my imagination? Ken asked, trying to get a better understanding of the being's nature. The being smiled, as if amused by Ken's curiosity. Of course, it means that I am not limited by the narrow confines of human imagination. Mortals may create gods in their own image, but I am beyond that. I am a concept that exists beyond the limits of your understanding. Suddenly, Ken heard a popping sound behind him. He turned to look, and was shocked to see another similar being grinning wickedly. I did not even realize someone was behind me, Ken remarked. I am the End. Well, as my name implies, people usually do not see me coming. The new being shot back, popping a few bubbles. You may also address me as the End. Ken felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the full extent of Mr. End's power just from his name alone. He had a feeling that this being was not to be trifled with. Mr. End, so this is it. Ken finally choked out. My judgment. Mr. End chuckled, making a sound like cracking ice. Perhaps, but first my brother has some more explaining to do. All right, so why am I here? And please don't say to make choices, asked Ken, wishing to learn more. Mr. End laughed at his response and his expired patience, and replied cryptically, while popping a bubble with his finger. You are here because you met your demise and died in your old universe. Ken was taken aback by Mr. End's response. He had a feeling that he was not going to get any straightforward answers from these two beings. He turned to the first being, hoping that he would be more forthcoming. And how might I address you? Ken asked the first mysterious being. The entity chuckled and declared, I am a concept that has existed since the dawn of time, which is why I have many names. I have been referred to by numerous names in numerous cultures. I am the Big Bang, the first event, or the creator, depending on who you ask. But fundamentally, I am just the idea of beginnings. Ken still had a lot of questions, but he was beginning to grasp the nature of these beings better. Even if he was still unable to fully comprehend or accept it, he was taken aback by the strange surroundings he found himself in. He had never seen anything quite like it before. The being, the god who had brought him here, seemed to be enjoying himself immensely, blowing bubbles all around them. I don't understand, Mr. Beginning, Ken said, feeling completely out of his depth. But the figure simply smiled and replied, Mr. Beginning, I like the sound of it. You are welcome to refer to me as that. As Ken stood between these two cosmic forces, Mr. Beginning and Mr. End, he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and trepidation. The implications of their existence and the powers they wielded were beyond anything he had ever imagined. He realized that his journey was just beginning, and the choices he would have to make might have consequences far beyond his comprehension. Links to the other chapters are in description.